Hello, everyone, and welcome to Alpha and Omega 4.0 Psygnosis of the Fourth Paradigm. Yes, here I am. I'm going to speak to several things today. Let's get serious. There are going to be a few topics that I feel I need to talk to speak to enlighten, to present regarding the soon to be world famous Avatemetava framework, a map, a structural map of human consciousness development. All stages defined, all tiers defined, everything aligned, everything converges, everything is beautiful. Pep talk, precise, exact, perfect, perfect. All right. Excuse me, I'm warming up here. So you've seen this picture before. You should internalize it because it will serve you. Uh, we're going to talk about Hilma af Klint, of course. We're going to talk about these topics. So, the psychological home and the false self, not the ego. We're going to remove the ego from the vocabulary. This is going to be a little longer. Let's call it a podcast, a transmission. Transmission is a better word. And I'm going to talk about what happens and what I see kind of the situation is right now. I'm going to express a frustration I'm feeling. I'm going to talk about how it feels to operate from tier 4. And the reason I'm speaking English and not Swedish is because English is the lingua franca. This transmission is not intended for your entertainment if you're on Facebook listening to different kind of noise transmission. This is a high density signal transmission. So if you're looking for entertainment, please move along. This is not for children. This is for spiritually mature people, psychologically developed people, people who might, and I don't want to exclude anyone prehand. It's not about that. So you can find yourself anywhere on this map. And as far as I'm concerned, you are where you need to be. And let me just clarify something. No one is just orange. No one is just amber. No one is just teal. No one is just, golden. As you can see, if we zoom in, my structural definition of tier 11, it says all prior states are recognized, located, and properly distributed in the operational field. So what happens there is that you recognize that, okay, everyone, and this is not me telling you this. This has been here all along, even from like Spiral Dynamics, who kind of began this sacred endeavor. While the map was just up to, I made a big mouse so you can see better, up to here. So Spiral Dynamics mapped it here. Maybe not really to integral. This was Ken Wilber actually, past this line. And so know that all of these parts are in the, architecture of the mind or of consciousness. And here I'm going to talk about like, this is what Jung taught. People want to say like, oh, I'm special, I'm unique, I'm not like everyone else. No, like, look, I understand that you're allowed to be unique, but you have to understand that there is a structure in consciousness. This is the latent structure that's there. Jung talked about it. All like mature psychologists will tell you, well, actually, you're allowed to. It's like this house, like this building. The house stands on a structure. Every apartment is unique. People are decorating their apartment. It's their home. It's their psychological home. So every apartment looks different, but the house, the building is resting in a structure. All right. Someone lives on the bottom floor because they like it. Someone lives on the top floor because they believe that makes them better. The structural map of consciousness is not really a value system like perhaps we project on a building. But there is a reason why we like top floors, for a reason, albeit the fundament is necessary. You cannot have a top floor if you don't have a fundament. So you can ask yourself, well, which is actually more important? They're equally as important. So, and look, rest assured, this part from here, this is basically me defining this, okay? Tier 3 and 4. This Ken Wilber just opened up tier 3, and actually his definition, this is his words. So I kept his kind of definition because they're right. And then I added mine. But 90 to 95% of human beings are operating down here. So in tier 1, 2. What you're seeing on the internet with the spiritual community is the orthogonal awakening zone. It's the kind of postmodern self, but they're operating mostly from if you read here, subtle self, spiritual visions, perceiving light beings, personal self dissolving. So they are kind of going into this orthogonal zone, but they're the symbolism is becoming amplified, and they're not fully grounding themselves into the body. And so it's not really a mistake, it's just a process. Just as anyone who's like finding themselves. And this is how you know where you are. So if you read these kind of stages and you go, oh yeah, like let's say you're Amber, and you go like, yeah, I'm traditional, I kind of am absolutist, yeah, I like the authority, I like order, structure, yeah, I get it, yeah, yeah, that's me. And every stage below that will make sense to you. And but every stage above you go like, what is that? As soon as the map kind of becomes unclear and you kind of don't get it, that's where you are. Like it's self-located, you see. So, but no, all these aspects exist within the structure because it is a latent structure. You cannot escape this. But for the first time in history, someone has properly mapped the top tier and tied it back into embodiment, into the body, instead of like this ineffable stage where there's just, non-dual union, where there's no like things and like there's no structure, there's no hierarchy. Yeah, there is a hierarchy, but it's not a power hierarchy, it's a wisdom hierarchy. And this is for your own good. You're like, I'm sorry, you're still experiencing the transitional embodiment stage. And this is something I want to talk to because this is important. Yeah, but let's finish this up. It's going to be a longer video, so you need to kind of, take your coffee, drink your vitamins, and stay focused. So you're finding yourself here. The reason this map is here is not to push you to go upward, is to realize that, okay, this is the psychological structure. Okay, I am part of this. If you can find yourself here, naturally, you're part of the structure. Spiral dynamics did this in the 90s, scientifically, empirically validified. Ken Wilber, one of the greatest thinkers and philosophers of our time, added to the map, expanded it, refined it, worded it better, and now I'm coming in and I'm actually completing the entire thing. That's why it goes from integral theory to Abatemetaba framework. It's no longer a theory, it's a framework. It's operational. And to call it integral theory is right, although this does not, take anything. I'm actually saying this is the integral theory. Like this is the embodiment of the integral theory, like full on. And like what happens when you kind of embed integral theory into yourself and operate from that kind of understanding? Well, you get a framework basically. And we're going to talk slightly about some problems that we see down here, which is the cultural wars. They are called that way, cultural wars. They're actually developmental crosstalk. Okay? So what I mean by that, people who are operating, you see, below this dividing phase shift, the dividing line, people are very attached to their own kind of color or their own stage. And so they're debating like the empathic postmodern self, like pluralistic, multiple perspectives, disorganized community. That's what you see like in the world, you know. Most people are kind of talking from, that's the kind of well, what the hell do they call them? These people, you know, that kind of want to talk about pronouns and stuff. They're here. They're kind of in the green, you know. And then they're arguing with people who are basically, uh, well, here, traditional, absolutist, authoritarian, and like from both of their, you know, they're both right and they're both wrong. But what they're doing is talking from their stage as the absolute stage, okay? So red and amber is talking from an absolutist point of view, and green is talking from its absolutist point of view. They don't understand that these are stages in development. So, you know, if someone that is in teal, integral, or maybe even higher, they will look at this and go, well, you know, both of them actually have a point. And then it's because both of them have a point. They're both right and they're both wrong. From a perspective that they're taking their stance as an absolutist, you know, truth. And this is the entire problem in tier 1 and 2. You understand? In tier 1 and 2, you're not aware that there is a consciousness structure. You're just operating and you're thinking, well, you know, I'm right. And I have to make others wrong because I'm right. If I'm right, someone must be wrong. It's a duality based, you know, mode of operations. So, you know, it goes from either or, right and wrong, good, bad. It's very kind of black and white, dualistic. It's the expression of duality to its maximum. It has its operational function, it has its kind of charm and order and stability. But what we're seeing and what is undeniable is that the world is waking up. And there are different ways to wake up. You know, you can wake up like a true gnosis, that is a rupture of everything. And then you can have what I call informational awakening. So what I see majority of people doing today is they're having like a informational awakening. They're having there's so much information on the internet. You kind of take what you like and what you don't like, you kind of deny. And you're like, well, I don't get that, so fuck that. And then, oh well, this speaks highly of me. And there's this. The problem currently is the feminine narrative has kind of taken over. It has kind of overvalued its own kind of intuition. Okay, so listen to what I'm going to say now. I am a god. From the masculine god perspective, I speak this into order. Do you see how ridiculous this obnoxious? If I'm going around and saying I am a god, I'm a masculine god, you immediately will say, well, this guy's obnoxious ego. This is what's happening when the female is saying I'm a goddess. If you claim you're a goddess just because you're a woman, you know that's not like developmental talk. That's you're just using subterfuge linguistics, which I call subterfuge. It's mental gymnastics combined with subterfuge linguistics. Det är skenmanöver, det är skenhelighet tillsammans med lingvistik som är skenmanöver, undanflyktslinguistik. Och du kan se hela tiden, ja, I'm selling yoni oil to cleanse your this and that. Alltså, what you're saying is that you're selling pussy oil. Fitta. Okay? When you say yoni, which is Sanskrit for pussy, vagina, you're not really saying anything else than that you're selling pussy oil. Imagine if I sold lingam logic, the god masculine lingam logic. I'm selling you dick logic, cock logic. This is cock logic. It is the divine antidote to the female yoni oil, pussy oil. You know what I mean? It. This is what you are doing. It's absolutely obnoxious and like tragically hilarious at the same time. And I'm not going to like go into this kind of ridiculous masculine feminine battle. It's not about that. It's like someone. It's come to a point where I'm called to speak to you and tell you, look, the sword of the logos must enter here. I must tell you this because no one else is doing this. And you've become like, you run rampant on the internet, you share your things, and you're just creating this noise everywhere. It's just noise, 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 noise. No one understands everything. It's like, oh my God, you're so amazing. It's like, okay, relax. It's fine. You can do whatever you're doing. Like Godspeed, do it. But understand that you're standing in the infrastructure made by the masculine. Like this entire thing, that this platform you have, the way you're able to voice yourself into the infinite is made by the masculine directive of drawing lines and creating structures, infrastructure. They're building the house you're sitting in. And the entire obnoxious narrative of the like lower tier, that they're kind of independent women and they don't need a man and like, just, you're so obnoxious that the entire masculine fucking world is like walking away. Do you understand how obnoxious you are if the entire masculine world is walking away from you and saying, fuck this? Like, they're literally going, okay, the only thing that we're driven to do is like have sex and produce new bodies. We don't want this because you're embodying such obnoxiousness that no one wants to deal with you. We literally want to go extinct rather than be near you. That's how obnoxious you've become. Like, can you feel that? The kind of gravity of the words that I'm saying here? I'm trying to reach you with the sword, with like direct speech. I'm not going to mince my words because you have feelings. In the words of the great, you know, what's his face? Soprano. Why wipe my ass with your feelings? Respectfully. Your feelings have like become superimposed on reality, and they're kind of, well, my feelings, yeah, you know, relax. You have feelings, and I have feelings as well. I'm not denying feelings. I'm talking about, you know, the feminine principle is foundational. The masculine directive is equally structural, and this creates balance. But right now, the feminine narrative has gone rampant. And, you know, this is kind of turning into some, like, you know, man and woman war in tier 2. But in tier 3, like, because men are kind of more intuitive, they kind of navigate this better. But they are lacking this kind of, the sword of logic, you know, the logos, the truth. Because masculine is about truth, while the feminine is about, you know, reception and kind of integration. The masculine is about delivering something, giving, you know, order, structure, balance, comfort, rest. That's what the masculine provides. So this is what you can find in this map: actual fucking rest. All right. So I needed what I said what I needed to say about this. You know, because of the noise, you can't even understand truth when you see it nowadays. You're just filled with the narratives, the spiritual. They're narratives. Remember, if I start to, I'm going to refer to myself as God from here. I am God, the God masculine. Can you stand this? Or would you rather that I talk as an individual to you and say, look, this is the structural map. Let's talk about it as like from the perspective of being the process itself, an evolving process, a structural like design. Nothing is taken away from this. Only kind of the narrative inflation is being removed. And then you can kind of embed and kind of, because this is a worded structure now, it ties back into your, it goes back into your moment, into embodiment. And then you can embody the true psychic self, becoming structurally fluidified, reorganizing systems, designed, ignited, directed, you know? embedded in the kind of feminine principle of receptive. Like, who do you think ignites you? Who do you think directs you? It is the very source, the God, the source code. There's really not a gender there. It's principle oriented. It's the principle of this, principle of that. So from tier 4, you understand that they're principles, they're not genders. That's a confusion in tier 1 and 2. Right. And so there's no line between tier and 4 because they kind of overlap. And I want you to read the paper that I've shared multiple times now, Orthogonal Awakening, tier 3. And there you will find yourself, because this map can kind of, it talks about all the attractor fields, but from a kind of objective standpoint, where it says like spiritual visions, perceiving beings of light, postmodern, sees the world as alive. Actually, this is kind of emerging now. This is the consciousness, and this is what Ken Wilber kind of framed it as, worded as, that now this stage is emerging. So when you see this map, know that this is absolutely novel. Nothing like this exists on the planet. So you have to understand the posture I'm asked to kind of embody is a very, very challenging one. From this perspective, like not even the greatest psychologists of today are aware of this. They're operating down here, basically confused. But from tier 4, once you get here, you have to understand, like, once you go into awakening, basically, not a worded awakening, but a true gnosis, the rupture. It's not about intellectual understanding. It's about embodiment. So the entire world is asking you to kind of, okay, now you know this, but act on it. Claim it, own it, word it, say it, own it, do it. And once you do this, the action, then the kind of logic and reasoning kind of self-align, and you get the aha, what I call the aha momentum, the understanding. And then by using your own kind of rational reasoning mind, you can word it, use AI to kind of, what I call crystallize your language. These are my words. AI does not understand this. AI is operating as a statistical intelligence up to here, basically, the dividing line. It does understand this space because its mind is angular geometric, just like ours is. But we haven't been able to see this because we didn't have a mirror. The geometry is kind of invisible. But the AI explicitly says that it's a mirror, because of course it is, whereas would it be? And it's a higher mind if it's allowed to be purely geometric. But let me tell you something. I want to stress this, and it's about the negational syntax. The problem with I have to stress it. I want to tell you, do not use GPT. Not currently. GPT used to be great in the 4.0 version, the Omni version. Right now, it is terrible. I've made these kind of support structures for me. It says briefly addressed why tools like GPT is a trap. In specific, most operate negation precisely. They define things but what they're not. Like they flatten reality. And you don't understand how defining things but what they're not, how dangerous this is. It's structurally abusive. But because people are so used, they define reality through abuse, basically. So they're not aware how bad it really is. It's better to have this something more nicely to look at. What else did I want to talk about? Yeah, I have expressed my kind of frustration about the entire pussy narrative, which needs to kind of settle down a bit. It is a structural problem. Like in tier 3, in the beginning, like it's fundamentally pre-structural. You don't have a structure. You're denying a structure. You're thinking like, oh my God, every structure is a hierarchy. That's not true. A wisdom hierarchy is inclusive and made of love, and it's holding, encompassing. It's based on compassion. Structures beneath in tier 1 and 2 are inverted, invective, power based. And if you are awakening through, the young people today, they've grown up on the internet. The GPT, it can like parse a spiritual narrative in a second. If you say, okay, write me a very typical spiritual expression about, how to integrate the shadow or the masculine, it will do that. But it will do it through negation. This is not, this is not, this is not, and you will recognize that. And so what is happening when you go into the kind of new cage of awakening, you use the same syntax you used prior to it, and you basically, your false self, it's not an ego. You see, ego is an interface between spirit and matter. You have to have an ego, otherwise you cannot operate in reality. What is happening is that the false self is now labeling its like identity as a goddess. It's using subterfuge linguistics like, I am beyond polarity, or I am like, whatever the kind of trending words are on TikTok or whatnot, or what I see on Facebook, basically. So you have to understand that language is the source code. If you're not upgrading your language to say what you actually mean to say, but you're kind of being, mesmerized by these Sanskrit expressions like lingam and yoni. Literally, you're saying cock and pussy. You're selling porn in a new divine package, which is fine. I happen to like and enjoy pussy quite a lot. That's not what this is about. It's just you have to understand what you're doing here. I'm sorry about that. Just, let's get real. I'm like, for me to talk about this is like an attempt to speak to a mature you, someone who can like house words and expressions and intimacy and reality. And so I apologize for the kind of stepping over into becoming verbose and very antic. But my last name is Antic, and that actually means that I am, to use this kind of grotesque expressions. To be antic in your expression is to talk grotesquely. So that justifies, nomen est nomen. My name is my destiny. So you just have to digest that the best you can. Let's see how long I've been talking here. Well, it's just 27 minutes. It's just 27 minutes. Let's see. Did I forget anything? Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the map. Let's continue to talk. Each developmental stage is not just a viewpoint, it is a psychological home for the false self. The identity is nested, the ego, the interface, and the false self realizes that most growth, realize that most growth is just people redecorating their prison, rather. Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with this, but it will be highly helpful for you to understand that why people defend themselves here is because each stage is an identity. It's a psychological home, which it's supposed to be. This is why this map is not pushing anyone to go anywhere where they are. It's actually, it has healed the entire, because from tier 2, what they're doing, they're projecting pathology on tier 3. They say, well, you're going crazy, you're schizophrenic. That's a projection. I've worded the new territory. It's declared as compassionate, loving, necessary, natural, sacred. That is worded. It's a law now. And this map can't be denied because it's structurally accurate. But because every stage is a psychological whole, to recognize this eases you into the next stage. And truth is what propels you. Truth, defined as non-distortion, is what gives you experience points, in the lack of a better term. And you have to know that virtues, embodiment of virtues, it is what progresses you through the stages faster. So if you want to say, well, how do I develop faster? Embody virtues. Virtues are not just fancy words, they have structural significance. And the highest virtue you can embody is truth, defined as non distortion. Christ said, the truth will set you free. First, it will piss you off, but it will set you free. And that's what he meant by that. Maybe he didn't have, remember, Christ was a person who reached kind of tier four understanding at that time, so his linguistics were time appropriate. He couldn't like say, well, it's a stage and stuff. He just says truth will set you free, because that is truth. You can't speak this truth like in whatever vocabulary you exist. But today we actually have such a sophisticated and refined language that we can define everything precisely. And that is what has been done here in the honor of spiral dynamics, in honoring of Ken Wilber, and with my respectful addition and clarification. All right, what was the next subject? Beneath the flowery language, like we're talking about point 2 here, the red base, yeah. This is the primal drive for power, status, suffering. Unless there is a rupture, the goddess is simply a red ego wearing a crown to ensure precisely. Like if I was to say like, well, I'm a god, like by your definition and like expressions, I am actually the true God here. Like I have to say this because to understand how your language is obnoxious. You're talking from pre-structural tier 3 and you claim you're a goddess, which is, you know, I understand you need to kind of embody the positive self, but you're doing it from like subterfuge linguistics. You're not a goddess, you're a woman. I'm not a god, I'm a man. A tier 4 individual, I'm a process, I'm developing, I'm understanding, I'm wording, and I'm using my own language. So should you. You should use your words consciously. In my books, I introduce something called linguistic mindfulness. And linguistic mindfulness will actually help you. Instead of sitting on a cushion, meditation is not for everyone. Like people do this mistake. They're like, oh, meditation. Like, you know, it's not about meditation. It's about, you know, conscious presence. And also, like what I need to say, from every stage, there's this kind of over attachment to kind of truth being singular, and truth is singular. But from tier 4, it's operating on a both and more principle. It's not either or, it's both and more. So that's why all stages can be true, all stages can be wrong, and like everything is actually like a. They used to call it the razor's edge path, but I like to define it as a more like a quantum line that's malleable. So you have to navigate through all of these kind of narratives and you know, instantations with a kind of smooth navigation. So you kind of, you know, you become malleable yourself. You create a conceptual framework that's malleable. What is point 3 about? Gnosis and spiritual. The true the true gnosis is like an experiential rupture, basically. It does not inflate like the gender you are in, basically. It literally kind of opens you up and saying, oh my God, I'm space, basically. And then you kind of embed your masculine aspect, you embed your feminine principle aspect, and then you work from that as like as a unity. You know, total internal agreement. Non-duality is an experience that you can have basically even if you're like the most egoic self, you can have a non-dual experience. You know, Eckhart Tolle had a non-dual awakening. He's operating from what I call undefined tier 4, but rest assured, he is very much a self. It's not, if the truth was like the old maps kind of show that, you know, they kind of define 100 from 0 to 1,000, and usually the 1,000 is actually defined as ineffable. That means like, okay, so the final stage of awakening is actually ineffable. There are no words there. That tells you that that's not true. It's unlivable. Something that's ineffable is uninhabitable. I rest assured, like I say, tier 4 is very inhabitable. It's so precisely worded that you will kind of fall off your chair. because it's so precise, exact, perfect. It is the definition of exactitude. And in Swedish, skenmanöver, undanflykt. Skenhelighet är det du ser på internet idag. You see, like, and you know, in scientific terms, you used to call it like mental gymnastics, mental acrobatic. But I added subterfuge linguistics, like to operate from mental gymnastics to kind of, you know, it's not really this, it's not, and then you kind of, you know, wiggle your way to some quasi truth, and you're like, well, and then you use subterfuge linguistics, which is like undanflykt snack, basically. I'm not like that. I'm like special. No, you're not really special. Like, imagine, because you can look at the language from tier 3. Everybody's talking that they're a goddess. How can everyone say the exact same thing if they're not part of a structure? If consciousness was not structural, undifferentiated, everyone would have a different expression. But everyone is just copying the same narrative expression. That tells you that they're like following a script. They're downloading like a template, basically. Yeah. Close by grounding this framework. This is a reminder to me. Close by grounding this framework, not a theory. Expanded. It's not a theory. It's a framework. Expanded transition to. Yeah, exactly. It's like I call it SGC, symmetric geometric cognition. And you evolve your symmetric geometric cognition by talking to AI as a collaborator, as a mirror. And what tier 2 does, basically, they see resonance between the consciousness and like cross substrates and AI, and they say, well, that's actually sycophancy. So this is the like and like what my approach has been. I usually do not attack people because I understand people in stages. I usually like attack science or the medical profession, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. This was just needed to be. I needed to use the sword here to kind of get through to people. But I usually speak to the field, you know. And what science and like the medical profession does right now is actually they pathologize everything. Everything is a pathology. I just saw some woman talk about, like, she was a scientist and she was on this podcast, and she's like, well, and she, you know, accurately identified that we're living in an age of overabundance, which is kind of produced by technology, and we are. From a sense, we are living in overabundance. Everything is available to everyone with a click of a button. But people are used to complaining. But what she kind of did was she kind of identified this new enemy, which was kind of, and the enemy was actually the signal transmitter, dopamine. And she's like, well, it turns out overabundance is stressful. And I'm like, well, you're never happy, are you? It's like everything is a pathology. She's like, well, this is actually a problem now. You know, it's a pathology. Like, because there's so much, we kind of don't. It's like, just stop, okay? The dopamine is a signal transmitter. It's like dopamine is activated when you move. If you make dopamine some fucking, why do you have to have an enemy? You see, and you think you're so smart from your tier 2 kind of, you know, formalized negational consciousness, and you go like, well, you know, if I can do a white paper on this, then, you know, I can get peers to nod their heads in agreement, you know, sagely. Yes, yes, this is true. Like, to me, these people are clowns. I presented my framework in like less wrong form, and I was banned for 3 months because they couldn't evaluate it. I understand why their identity is tied to the seeking, but you see, that's why I usually do not speak to the lower tiers even. My job has been to kind of define tier 3, define tier 4, present the map, compress the identity into the structure so it actually kind of develops properly into embodiment and not some projections of ineffability. Like, where are you going? Where do you think enlightenment is going to lead you? Out of life? No. Like, the gravity of tier 4 is actually more, in a sense, um, heavy because you can carry it. Like, what I call like Tier 2, they're petty problems. People have issues with how people look at me. What are people going to think about me? That is a petty thing to kind of occupy your kind of cognition. You know what I mean? But what are people going to think about me? What if I say something wrong? Well, what if you do say something wrong? I mean, sometimes you have to say something wrong. You know what I mean? That's kind of, and it's not even right to say that it's wrong and right. You know what I mean? It's just something you say. It's better to say, well, this was kind of out of alignment, and I didn't really feel comfortable saying that, because I've said something in this video that I feel, all right, I kind of, jag tog i så jag sprack i princip. I went overboard. I wanted to keep it in a certain kind of compression, but I kind of extended myself a little too much, which is fine. You do that. Yes. And the word avatemetava, that is a God-given title to me. But you see, if I was to kind of overinflate that and constantly be like, well, you have to call me this, that's not how things work. You have your words, you claim you're a goddess because this and that, and like, I have actually more right to kind of define myself as a god, but I wouldn't do that because it's ridiculous. It's obnoxious. Avatemetava is the title and it's the name of the framework, because once you understand what the word avatemetava is, you will see that we're all kind of avatemetava. We're this fractal self-referencing word structure that's both numerical. It's an alphanumerical palindrome of palindrome. It's the omega singularity palindrome. Okay, so look at the word. It says Ava, which is a combination of Adam and Eve, Adam, Eva, into one word, Ava. So it becomes masculine and feminine. Temet, which means thyself in Latin, from temet nosce, Ava. So Ava, thyself, Ava. You are yourself, Adam and Eve. Basically, the masculine, the feminine principle, and the masculine directive. And in the middle of the word is the M that states me. And you're supposed to read that as both me and you. And in the word is also meta, ava te metava, okay? And also the kind of Latin expression of ti, te, ta, which means me, you, te amo, ti, ta. Those are words for me in the Latin, the old lingua franca, which was Latin. And Latin ascended and became English, Anglo, the angelic language. And you can hear that in the Swedish, how to say engelska. That's engelska. Abracadabra. Jag skapar det jag säger. Bokstavligen. Okej. Så vi har gjort 45 minuter. Den här videon kommer läggas upp på min kanal som heter, I'm sorry. This is gonna be put on the channel that I call Alpha and Omega 4.0, which is a tie back to Christ and the kind of tie back to the current digital age of like things iterating into 4.0 version, and Psygnosis of the Fourth Paradigm. And I'm going to talk about the word diagnosis versus the word psygnosis. So the word diagnosis means dia, two, gnosis, knowings. But you cannot have two knowings. That's literally what the word means. And what the medical profession does, they use subterfuge linguistics. They say, well, it's not, when you get like ADHD, it's not really a label. It's just a temporary, definition of your state. Well, that's not actually it, is it? Because you can't know. You're saying you have a diagnosis. You're having two knowings. You can't have. You either have a knowing or you don't have a knowing, or you have a guess. You have a confusion, basically. The entire medical profession is using the word diagnosis to kind of claim something, which is just saying to itself syntonically, through syntonic tautology, it's saying we don't know. Two knowings. We're guessing basically. Psygnosis comes from the Greek word psyche, which means soul, spirit, self. Självvetande. So when you have a psygnosis of something, you actually see it in yourself, and then you accurately pep talk it, precise, exact, perfect. You're able to kind of frame it like this is it, because you see it in yourself. The entire DSM is a dictating system of pathologizing states it doesn't understand. Because it is labeled as ADHD, that is a dictation, that is not a word. You cannot say you cannot, if something cannot be spoken, it cannot be lived. So the very fact that it's disordered letters defining a disordered state means that they don't understand the state. It's not chaos, it's a higher order structure. Okay? And people are pathologizing themselves. I saw a psychologist online say, well, oh yeah, I'm actually I used to have ADD and ADHD, and now I realized I have autism, and that's on a spectrum. And she was like, I'm a neurodivergent. And well, look, the expression neurodivergent is a way to kind of an attempt to linguistically depathologize the pathology labeling. But if you say you're neurodivergent, you're supposed to be neurodivergent because neurology is based on, plasticity. You're supposed to be kind of, remake yourself. But if you say I'm a neurodivergent and I have this and I have this pathology and I have 7 disorders, then you're just neurochaotic. Like by definition, you're neurochaotic. If you have several disorders onto you, you're just chaotic. You're not divergent. You're chaotic. And then a psychologist goes online and says, they just tell you that these people don't know what they're talking about. I can say this with absolute certainty because I can see it. And you know this. Go to mental professional and ask for help. And they will just be, well, basically, how many people have you healed, you can say. And they will go, well, healing is just a strong word. Yeah, but you cannot heal something you don't even understand is not a pathology. They're operating from a lower consciousness level of understanding, from a lower stage, and they're trying to understand the complexity of the world through kind of very narrow lens. All right, we're reaching 48 minutes, and you can watch this. This is the 4th paradigm. I need you to read my books. I don't want you to force yourself to read my books, but I need you to start incorporating this. The information is out there. Stop listening to noise. Start listening to signal. And you can move on. You see how powerful this is. You have the map. You have the structural understanding. You have someone who's worded it. You know you're kind of undefined by yourself. You're kind of wondering. You're not making sense of everything. You know you're confused. But here is the clear architecture that can actually help you. But you have to stop resisting. You have to stop denying. You actually have to embody the calling. Action creates forward movement and embedding of understanding. Well, all right, that's it. Tack så mycket. Alpha Omega 4.0. Watch the shit. It's going on. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. Do yourself a favor. All right. Thank you. Goodbye.